So one thing I constantly see is charities can get themselves a little bit tied up with some of the terminology in impact management. So things like outputs, outcomes, impact. Could you just give us some simple definitions what those things are and what the difference is between them?
Sure, the lingo is a little bit slippery, isn't it? And you could probably have a dozen sort of social impact practitioners sitting here talking with you, and we might all give you slightly different answers. So that's not necessarily going to be helpful. Look, all I can say is, I spend all my time operating in this space, and so I do have some definitions that I certainly like to stick to, and that hopefully the clients that I work with find helpful. I would talk about outputs more in the context of what we call monitoring, and maybe there's another word that needs to creep in: monitoring, evaluation, things like that. So it's the sort of statistical bean counting side of things, where we're essentially saying, how much stuff have we been doing and who with? So, we might say over the last 6 months, we've run, 47 Tuesday night youth drop-ins, and they've been attended by 66 young people, and they're all aged between 13 to 19 or whatever. That's the sort of the outputty side of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Well, then we get to outcomes. And outcomes, we are very much challenging ourselves with questions around so what, around what's changing. So an outcome really isn't an outcome if it's not describing something that has shifted because of our input. Yeah. So because of what we did there, so hopefully some kind of difference was made. Now, typically in outcomes, we'll be talking about indicators of change. So, for example, somebody started attending a Zumba class, and they were really unfit and overweight, over the course of, 12 sessions, they were in better shape, they felt healthier, all those kind of things. So, and some of those outcomes will be really easy to measure. Yeah. Like if you wanted to, Weight Watchers has got really good outcomes in terms of you get on the scales and you know whether you've got the outcome or not. But of course, some outcomes are a bit more subjective, and we've got to ask people the question, and how are you feeling? And you find it hard to get out of bed in the morning before you started to do this program. And now, I'm actually feeling more motivated. I want to get out there. I'm meeting my friends again, all those kind of things. So generally, that's what we're talking about with outcomes. I do some work, though, with particularly in some of the health sector, particularly when you're perhaps dealing with older people. So I do some work with Age UK and with a number of the carers centres in our region. I'm up here in the Northeast. Sometimes you're dealing with people who are not going to get better. Yeah. Actually, maybe they've got a deteriorating condition, or simply they're getting towards the end of their life. Yeah. And so in those examples, you can still have an outcome, which might be actually to enhance someone's quality of life that little bit more while they are older and more frail, or while they have got a debilitating condition that you simply don't want to get worse and it needs to be managed well. So essentially, that's where prevention can also creep in as an outcome too. We can say, we know that people in this group are at risk of falls, for example. And so through our program, 90% of our cohort have not had any falls for the last 6 months. And so that can be an outcome as well. And then the impact, really, I often say, is you're using a kind of a combination of your outputs and your outcomes to tell a story about, therefore, here's the difference that we've uniquely made as an organization. And you might aggregate that up through all the various programs that you're running, or you might say this has been the impact of this specific program. The life chances for this particular group of young people in this particular neighborhood are so much improved because we did X, Y, and Z, and here's the results. So that's how I interpret the language. I hope that's helpful.